Listen to the JT Sports Podcast on all podcasting platforms and leave a 5-star review.
Texas A&M was defeated by Mississippi State 42-24. Now, let's be honest. Most of us saw this coming because there was no way Texas A&M, with the way their offense has struggled this season, was going to be able to keep up with the offense of Mississippi State. Now, yes, you were expecting Texas A&M's defense to be able to hold Mississippi State to under 40 points, because I don't think too many of us expected for Mississippi State to put 40 on Texas A&M. But their offense was really bad in this game. Really bad. And after the A-Chain fumble, things started to really tilt heavily in Mississippi State's favor. And then you had the Max Johnson injury, which he ended up having to leave the game in the fourth quarter due to a thumb injury on his throwing hand. Texas A&M had 4 turnovers. The offensive line was struggling. The passing game was struggling. Haynes King had to come in. And you already know when Haynes King comes in, you know your run game is going to get a boost, but your passing game goes down tremendously. And it's funny because after the game, right, Jimbo Fisher, he gets up on the little podium for the post-game press conference, right? And the reporters ask him the same questions almost every game. Hey, Jimbo, the offense was struggling out there. What's going on? And Jimbo Fisher says the same response every single time. There's nothing wrong with the offense. The offense is fine. The players just got to execute. And he says it every single time. And it's like, Jimbo, I feel like these coaches have egos. And when they get to the podium, sometimes they have a little bit too much pride to admit when they have to change some things. Because me and you both know what we see on the field, Jimbo understands is not good. And he understands that it's more than just the players not executing. Because at the end of the day, your job as a coach is to put your players in the best positions to succeed. A lot of people keep asking, why is Texas A&M struggling when they have so much talent? Didn't they just have the #1 recruiting class? Yes, they did. But you want to know why they're struggling? Because of coaching. And I tell people this almost every single day I wake up and record this podcast, that it doesn't matter how talented of a team you have if you don't have good coaching. 5- and 4-star players don't just coach themselves. Somebody has to help them improve. And for Jimbo Fisher, his offense does really help. His offense, as a matter of fact, hinders the development of his players. When is the last time Jimbo Fisher has had a competent quarterback after Jameis Winston? If you want to say DeAndre Francois, I'll give you that. But outside of DeAndre Francois, Jimbo Fisher hasn't really had a good quarterback. And then, that was at FSU. Texas A&M, he got Kellen Mond. And Kellen Mond was solid. He was good. He wasn't elite, he wasn't great, but he was good. And outside of Kellen Mond and DeAndre Francois, Jimbo Fisher hasn't really had a lot of successful quarterbacks, but yet we consider him to be the quarterback whisperer. At one point, that name used to be true. He was pretty good with quarterbacks. Before Jameis Winston, a lot of people forget that he had a pretty good run. He had Christian Ponder, who got drafted by the Vikings. You had E.J. Manuel before him, who got drafted by the Buffalo Bills. So, he had a pretty good run at the quarterback position prior to Jameis Winston. Now, when Jameis Winston came, that's when everybody started to give him so much high praise and regard because Jameis Winston exploded, won a Heisman Trophy, got drafted by Tampa Bay. So you look at the year 2022 right now, Jimbo Fisher, it looks as if his offense has become outdated and some changes need to be made. And, after the game, everybody always asks, what's next? Well, what's next for Texas A&M after losing 42-24 against Mississippi State? Guess what? You got to go on the road against Alabama. And guess what? It's going to be prime time. And you want to know what else? You got to go against Nick Saban. And everybody can say, man, JT, like Texas A&M is going to be able to give Alabama a close game because, Alabama hasn't really looked all that great. They haven't really looked as dominant, even though they are coming off a really good win against Arkansas, but Bryce Young gets banged up and all that. But at the same time, you got to remember, you heard what Jimbo Fisher said about Nick Saban, and you heard the words that were exchanged this offseason. So this game is going to be really personal. And if there's one person in this sport you don't want to pee off, it's Nick Saban, because every time you do, he makes you pay. And the last time I remember a situation like this was against LSU. This was right after LSU had that national championship winning season, right? They were feeling themselves. They were talking crap after the game about Alabama. But Nick Saban's like, wait till we play them next year. So before the game, right, Nick Saban gets interviewed. And the reporter's asking him, his thoughts about last year and what happened. And, his expectations for this year's game. And, this was one of the most ruthless, aggressive responses that I have ever heard out of Nick Saban when it came to a pregame question from an interviewer. This man said, we want to go in this game and change the way they think. And you can go look this up. He said he wanted to go in that thing and he wanted him and his team to change the way they think. Think about those statements. So you go into this Texas A&M game and you're Jimbo Fisher. You are struggling on offense. Your offensive line can't protect. You don't really know what's going to happen with your quarterback position. Your defense is on and off. What's going on? So what's next for Texas A&M is either one of two things. Either this team is going to play really good Saturday, it is going to be a tightly contested contest, or they're going to get embarrassed, and Jimbo Fisher is going to continue to have a nightmare season. Because let's be honest, nobody expected Texas A&M to be at the point that they are in right now, this early into the college football season. Because their first couple of games were supposed to be gimmies. And yet they lost Appalachian State. And yet they're struggling right now. But the thing is, when it comes to the hot seat talk, I'm not there quite yet. Because you see, the thing with Jimbo Fisher, and you guys all know this, is that he's good to get you 8 wins. And I know you're not going to be happy with that, but he's going to find a way to get to 8 wins because he did it last season, despite all odds. And, he is a pretty good coach. He is a really good recruiter. He does know offense. He knows more than me and you. But at the same time, he does have to make changes. And that's part of being a head coach. But those changes are going to happen this season. When it comes to somebody taking over play calling and things like that, I doubt anything really happens during the season. But we'll see what happens during the off season. But if a change was to happen inter season, I still don't really think it's going to be all that much of a difference. And you can say, oh, JT, well, anybody's better than Jimbo Fisher. I promise you, you can do a lot worse than Jimbo Fisher as your play caller. And I'm not saying that to praise him in a sense, but I don't really think there's nobody on Texas A&M staff who could really legitimately do a better job at calling plays than Jimbo Fisher, because the guys on Jimbo Fisher's staff, Jimbo Fisher didn't pick up on the staff to say, oh yeah, you're eventually going to call the plays eventually. You get what I'm saying? They were put on the staff for other duties. So if Jimbo Fisher needs a legitimate play caller, he needs to go out and do a legitimate search for one and hire one. But should he be on the hot seat? I still don't think so. I still think that Texas A&M is there. Like, a lot of people make it seem like Jimbo Fisher's been there and he hasn't done anything. Like, Texas A&M has talent. They're right there. A lot of people just feel like he should be getting them to the college football playoffs and winning SEC titles right now. But you see, it's not happening that way. It's not happening right now. And a lot of people are asking when. And I don't know when it's going to happen. But I mean, Texas A&M has the talent. It's there. It's just really about getting the right pieces there, and that's on Jimbo Fisher. But when it comes to the hot seat talk, I still think that Jimbo Fisher is going to be able to produce a okay season for A&M. So I can't really give you a definitive answer right now on if I think Jimbo Fisher should be on the hot seat, because I still want to see how the season plays out. However, right now, I still want to wait and see, because people act like Texas A&M season is over. They're 3-2. They still have plenty of games left to go. You are going to be playing against Alabama. Alabama is going to be a favorite against you by probably double digits. However, one thing that you have is talent. And that talent can end up playing well on any given Saturday. How many times have we seen Texas A&M going into a game that we didn't think they were going to win, and they won? A good example of that was the last time they beat Alabama with Zach Calzada. There was no way any of us thought that Texas A&M with a backup quarterback was going to be able to beat Alabama with Zach Calzada. But Zach Calzada balled out. So the talent's there. However, Texas A&M is going to be facing an Alabama team that is super talented. And Nick Saban is going to be heavily motivated, and he's definitely going to have these guys heavily motivated. And same thing with Jimbo Fisher. But you see, A&M season is not over, because after they go on the road and they play Bama, they got a bye week. And then after that bye, they go back on the road, but they play South Carolina, which is a winnable game. So let's say you lose Alabama, you're 3-3 before the South Carolina game. You go on the road, you beat South Carolina, which is a winnable game, 4-3. Then you play Ole Miss. You got a good chance to win that one, 5-3. You beat Florida 6-3. You go on the road. You beat Auburn 7-3. So I mean, for Texas A&M, they still have everything in front of them to have a pretty good season. But you see, A&M fans just expected playoffs, and right now, early into the season, their playoff hopes are already gone pretty much. So for A&M, right now, you look at Jimbo Fisher, and changes aren't going to be made right away. But hopefully you get good play out of your defense in this Alabama game. Your defense can help set your offense in good scoring position. And hopefully you can get some decent field goal kicking that can put some points up on the board. And hopefully your offense can put some touchdowns on the board as well. That would be a plus. You would love to see that. So that's going to be the kind of style of football that Texas A&M has to play. They're going to be in a lot of close games. They're going to be ugly games most of the times, and they're going to have to find different ways to win. And on top of that, you don't really know what's going to happen with Max Johnson, so you're going to have to maybe move forward with Haynes King, and he can't throw the ball at all, really. So for Jimbo Fisher, things don't really look good as far as what's happening during this season. But, it's not too late to get things turned around. Because the last thing Jimbo Fisher wants is for things to go sailing all the way south and Texas A&M only wins 5 games, and they don't make a bowl game. Now, I think that Texas A&M is too talented of a team to implode and win less than 8 games. But I've been wrong about a lot of things, and I could be wrong about Texas A&M, but I definitely do think that they should be able to get the 8 wins. And this Alabama game, yes, it could be a blowout, but at the same time, A&M does have a really talented roster. So at the same time, that talent being there, yes, they are depleted at certain positions. Yes, they are dealing with injuries and all kinds of other stuff. A&M still is more than capable of being able to give Alabama a competitive football game. Like, Texas gave Alabama a great football game, and they lost their starting quarterback after the first quarter. So for A&M, you definitely do have the pieces to give Alabama a great game, because Alabama hasn't looked like a super dominant team. But when it comes to Jimbo Fisher being on the hot seat right now, I got to say, no, I'm going to hold off on that talk. But depending on how this season goes from this point out, I'll come back and revisit this topic. But this is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you go listen to the JT Sports Podcast on all podcasting platforms. Wherever you get your podcast from, the JT Sports Podcast is available. Make sure you go ahead and rate it 5 stars. Also, if you're listening to this on YouTube, make sure that you go ahead, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure that you share. And I will see you guys with another episode shortly of the JT Sports Podcast.